Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Matt.
And welcome to Sofa Reviews. Today we're watching the new shit version of Clash of the Titans.
Released in 2010, it's a remake of the 1981 film of the same name.
Because no one will have seen the original or even heard of Greek mythology, we start with long and tedious narration.
But in time, mankind grew restless. They began to question the gods, and finally, rise up against them.
We're then shown a fisherman finding a casket containing the baby Perseus and his dead mother.
After some utterly pointless nonsense, we see that Perseus has grown up into a rather dull and generic-looking man.
They sail towards a statue of Zeus before spotting some soldiers tearing it down.
Hades then appears, killing the soldiers and Perseus' family because... evil?
We then see the gods debating what has happened before Hades interrupts them.
What do you want, brother?
Let me loose upon them.
So you want his permission, despite the fact you've already slaughtered hundreds of people without it?
Zeus agrees to this before we see Perseus being taken to Argos by what we're told are the only surviving soldiers of the attack on the statue.
The soldiers and their lucky mascot Perseus are taken to see the king and queen of Argos.
Despite the apparent horrendous losses, they decide to celebrate until Princess Andromeda speaks out.
Hundreds of our men have lost their lives. Yet we celebrate. You're provoking the gods and you act as if there will be no consequence.
Well, what do you want? Should we be afraid? Should we be trembling and soiling ourselves in fear?
Yes! They're gods, you can't stop them, and they've already killed hundreds of people.
The Queen continues boasting how they don't need the gods until Hades turns up and decides to kill the soldiers he missed earlier.
He then kills the dozy tart of a queen before announcing that the Kraken will destroy the city in 10 days unless the princess is sacrificed to it.
Before he leaves, Hades tells Perseus that he's the son of Zeus.
And everyone is so kind to Perseus now that he's found out who he is.
Before they can continue, the king approaches Perseus and asks him to help, as only a demigod can save them in this situation.
He refuses and so is thrown into a prison cell where he receives a visit from Io, who attempts to challenge him for title of blandest character in the film.
Aside from discovering that she doesn't age, she's mainly there just to tell Perseus his origin story.
Basically, a man called Acrisius led an army to besiege Olympus, and so to make an example of him, Zeus raped his wife, and now Perseus is born.
Zeus also strikes Acrisius with lightning, deforming him for throwing his wife and son into the ocean.
Instead of just hating absolutely everyone, Perseus decides he'll now help the people who beat him up and tried to burn him alive.
They let him out of prison before he prepares with some soldiers to go on a journey to see the Stygian witches.
What is this?
It's a mechanical flying owl from a much more credible film. You won't be needing it.
They head off from the city before we see Acrisius, now calling himself Calibos, in a discussion with Hades.
Hades burps into Calibos's face in order to give him magical powers and sends him off to kill Perseus.
The group decides to take a stop so Perseus can have some sword training.
You fall, you die.
Perseus uses his fishing skills, pretending the other warrior is an enraged guppy in order to win the sword fight.
Later, Perseus discovers his lightsaber sword of the gods lying around, but refuses to use it because he's a moron.
Soon after, he gets a visit from his stepfather.
Luckily, the other soldiers arrive on time to prevent Calibos from easily killing Perseus.
So in the first battle, after you've told someone that if you lose your balance, you die, you immediately throw yourself onto the floor.
Once again, Calibos seems likely to kill Perseus, but someone helpfully cuts his hand off.
His blood summons giant scorpions, which leads to a really shit action scene, best highlighted by the shit spear throw.
They fight their way through before they're saved by some djinn, who are apparently made of wood.
Perseus goes to thank them for their help, but comes out in a rash for actually trying a different emotion.
They tell him to pray to Zeus to heal, but he refuses because he's still a moron.
The djinn heals Perseus and then decides to join them, because that's what it says in the script. Look, they're riding giant scorpions now.
They reach their destination and ask the Stygian witches how to defeat the Kraken before they're attacked.
Our hero displays no forethought, intelligence or cunning, but luckily the old women just throw the eye to him anyway.
He's told only Medusa can kill the Kraken and heads off, not even checking to see if her severed head would still work.
They sail to Medusa's island, finding more time for crappy training, now with added awkward flirting.
In the temple, they fight Medusa, who kills most of the soldiers before finding she can't turn the djinn into stone, so he blows up instead.
Now that he's led all of his party to their pointless and inevitable deaths, Perseus finally decides to kill Medusa so that he can keep all of the XP to himself.
Heading outside with Medusa's head in a bag, he arrives just in time to see Calibos stab Io.
This inspires him to be less of a moron, and he finally uses his lightsaber sword to defeat Calibos.
He goes to Io, but she dies, turning into light as she does so.
Luckily, the Pegasus of plot convenience shows up and he's able to fly to Argos in time for the eclipse.
We see Zeus giving the command to unleash the Kraken before we cut to Argos.
Here we see that the locals have taken to listening to a scabby, sunburned, insane tramp. As you do.
As Perseus gets to Argos, Hades sends out his flying minions to stop him and steal the Medusa head.
Luckily, the Kraken is rather polite, and so stops destroying the city while they resolve this question of ownership.
Perseus flings himself off the Pegasus to grab the Medusa head in the air before crashing through a ceiling and into a fire.
Luckily, Perseus, Medusa's head, and the bag are all fireproof, and so he turns the Kraken to stone.
For no particular reason, the insane tramp tries to kill Andromeda, but then kills the completely unguarded king instead.
And then Hades shows up so that Perseus can throw a sword at him.
Perseus dives into the water, easily swimming with his heavy armour on, to save Andromeda.
On the beach, Andromeda inexplicably knows that her father is dead, and so offers Perseus herself and the kingdom of Argos, but he remembers he's left the oven on.
Zeus brings Io back to life so that they can live happily ever after and the film ends. And in conclusion, I like Liam Neeson. I really like the original movie. This film is awful.
I think we're going to be fair with this one and just tell you everything that's wrong with this film without at all comparing it to the original.
Don't become one of them.
Right, there's a lot to get through. Let's begin. Why is Olympus so bright?
Why is Hades ill and magnetic?
Why did they send soldiers to attack a statue? Surely they just have to stop worshipping the gods and the rest will do itself.
How do humans know that the gods need their worship? Surely they'd have kept that a secret?
The gods need us. They need our worship.
Why are they so sure that this is the time of man if only a demigod can get them victory?
It's the era of man. We need to get rid of the gods. That's why we need a demigod to save us. Because without the gods and their gifts and their bastard offspring, we'd never be able to defeat any of these monsters. Oh wait.
Why is Perseus the only one with short hair?
Why is Perseus such a dull, tedious, miserable, brooding turd of a character?
Why are the gods wearing armour even when casual?
Why did Hades actually attack Perseus and his family in the boat? And why didn't he realise that Perseus was the son of Zeus then?
Interesting.
Why did they release the Kraken when they had no trouble killing all the soldiers, and surely the Queen was example enough?
Why doesn't Zeus know anything about Perseus when he was presumably watching Acrisius throw him into the sea?
Why does Perseus care or even want to save Argos?
If Acrisius is still alive, admittedly calling himself Calibos, why isn't he still the king?
Throughout the film we see only one guy praying to Zeus for help and guidance, which is surely what Zeus wanted to happen, and I imagine lots of people in Argos were doing the same, so surely that should be the end of it? And how come Zeus never helps the guy who's constantly praying to him? Perhaps that's why everyone hates you.
Why is Perseus such a shit hero? Gets eaten by a scorpion, he needs to be saved on 2 occasions when he first meets Calibos, and he leads all of his friends to their death.
Why does Perseus make so many tedious speeches?
If the djinn can be stared at by Medusa and survive, why didn't he just pop in and cut her head off while the rest made dinner?
Why is there a djinn in this film anyway?
If you know you can't look at Medusa, why do you come armed with a bow and arrow?
Why don't the scorpions form from Calibos's blood in the second fight?
Why didn't Hades realise that Perseus had killed Medusa and Calibos and maybe done something about it?
Why did Hades send his flying minions after Perseus when he could have turned up himself and been more effective?
Why was Hades, a god and lord of the underworld, the easiest thing for Perseus to defeat?
Why does this film have more talking, more characters, yet less personality and less of a point?
And there we have it, a film that's shit on its own merit, as well as being spectacularly inferior to the original.